That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about RRR, Rise, Roar, Revolt, the cult sensation that is the 12th film directed by S.S. Rajamouli, which actually came out in March of 2022.
Oh, it did?
Mm-hmm.
We received a lot of comments to review this film, which I believe was a setup, because y'all probably thought I was going to rag on it, which I am not doing.
Well, it's kind of, taken the critical world by storm, as it's ended up on a lot of best of year-end lists and has been receiving some awards consideration. Notably, S.S. Rajamouli is India's highest paid director. 3 of his films, including this one, are in the top 5 highest grossing Indian films. So he's a big deal.
Go ahead.
And works in what's called Telugu, which has its own name of Tollywood cinema.
Oh, okay.
Which, unlike Bollywood, which is technically out of Bombay cinema from Mumbai.
Okay. Well, this is a style of filmmaking I'm not familiar with. It's very different from what I'm used to. Overall, I think it's something to see.
It is exuberant and excessive.
Unfortunately, I watched this movie immediately after watching Avatar 2, The Way of Water. And I think that certainly didn't help, because now here's another 3+ hour film that is a spectacle, but visually cannot compare to Avatar 2.
No, but it's interesting because Rajamouli, you could probably say, is like the James Cameron of Indian cinema,
sure,
based on his success.
But I think a lot of the CGI felt a little chintzy to me after watching Avatar 2. So, but trying to be fair, I think it is a spectacle. I will say, I think the story, like the basic story, is really interesting. And I don't know what this is based on, but I could see this being a very good book.
Well, this is basically fantasy fiction, because the 2 Indian freedom fighters, because it's set in the 1920s, that are the central focus, were, as I understand, based on real people, but never actually met. So this is like in Mary Queen of Scots, when we should see Queen Elizabeth and Mary meeting. That never happened. That's what this film is too.
Well, it's very interesting. The basic story is 1920s India. The British are all up and through there, wreaking havoc.
Colonizing.
Mm-hmm. And we see that this one British military person and his wife have essentially kidnapped a young Indian girl from her tribe for the sole purpose of drawing like henna art on her hand. So of course the mother of this child and the village people are very upset, and we're told that this village in particular, they are known for like being very like tight knit, so much so that they have like a shepherd who, if one of them goes missing, will like do everything in their power to get that missing tribe member back. So that person, the shepherd, is named Bheem.
Mm-hmm. Komaram Bheem, played by NTR, or N.T. Rama Rao Jr.
So he's been dispatched to find her, and in doing so, and very early on meets a person named Raju,
played by Charan,
who initially they have a whole song about how they're friends, but ultimately their friendship's going to end up as them being enemies with bloodshed.
But yeah, the songs tell the whole story.
The song tells the full story right away.
And they meet over this like spectacular saving of this boy that might burn to death.
We need to talk about that. But they meet and they become fast friends
very close. Mm-hmm.
But we find out that Raju is like a guard or an officer for the white British military person. So as the audience, initially we're like, oh, he's a bad guy, like he's a traitor. But that's not true. His backstory, Raju's, is that when he was a kid, his dad was like a freedom fighter type guy and was killed. But before he died, he made his son Raju promise, like, you are going to get like basically firearms in the hands of all the Indians, because if all of the Indian people were able to defend themselves against the British, we wouldn't be in this predicament.
Mm-hmm. Notably, the father is played by Ajay Devgn, who is a very notable Indian star.
But there's this weird intersection when Raju realizes Bheem is like trying to take back this little Indian girl from his boss, where he's like, I'm obligated to arrest you.
Because it compromises his cover.
Right, because he has his own undercover mission to, satisfy his dad's wish, which is, to also help his people. But they finally get together and execute both of their plans. So the young girl is rescued. The white military British guy is killed. He's shot with his own bullet, which we need to talk about. And Raju starts the process of getting firearms into the hands of the Indian people so they can defend themselves.
And they both have lady loves.
And they both find love one of Bheem finds it with like the daughter of the white military guy.
Jenny.
The end, and then the final like scene of the film is sort of like a musical number honoring, like, I'm assuming, historical Indian figures. Yeah. So
Well, because it's odd, because it ends in the 1920s, and there was the Indian independence didn't happen until 1947. So there's a long way to go still.
But yeah, so I thought that the basic story is very interesting. It's a very colorful movie, and in general, this style of storytelling doesn't work for me, because I feel like the sort of there's a lot of brevity and color in the story that I think sometimes takes away from the bones that I think are very serious.
Like the significant despair and violence of the colonizing British.
But it's not for me to say, I mean, obviously this is, this style of filmmaking and the culture it appeals to, enjoy it. So, like, I respect that. For me, it was, probably the biggest thing is a lot of scenes feel so drawn out. It just feels so long.
It's much kind of like how I felt about James Cameron's Way of Water. It's like, this is very self-indulgent in a way that I respond, like many respond to and love, but it's self-indulgent.
Even the intro to the film is long, because we get like all these disclaimers about how no animals were harmed, and then we get like in memoriam of some person who may have died during the filming, and then all the different production companies involved. That was long. My first note is when we see the wife of the British commander, I thought like, oh, was there like Botox and filler in the 1920s?
Wait, I watched this whole last movie and didn't realize that is Alison Doody, who is the female villain from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade back in 1989. And she also did this terrible film with Pierce Brosnan called Taffin from the 90s. But yeah, I remember she was this gorgeous blonde Nazi that I was confused by as a youth. I didn't realize that's her. And her husband is played by Ray Stevenson.
So when the daughter gets kidnapped, of course, the mother goes to chase the cavalcade with her daughter.
We're talking about Molly, the small Indian girl.
Yes, sorry. And the cavalcade is stopped, and then one of the soldiers is about to shoot the mother when the main guy says, "Do you know how much that bullet cost? Like, making it in the UK, sending it over, it's an expensive bullet.
By the time it gets into your barrel, it's worth 6 shillings already."
Something. And you're going to waste that on this brown rubbish. They keep calling the Indian people like brown rubbish. And then
buggers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which, obviously stirs up something like, oh, I can't wait till they get these motherfuckers. But he doesn't shoot her. He hits her upside the head with a tree branch.
It's like shockingly hard.
Yeah, and you see it. That kind of took my breath away. Okay, when we first meet Raju, he's like the military cop.
That is a good scene.
It's a very good scene. It's long.
It's over the top, but it's
where you have like, it looks like tens of thousands of Indian people surrounding this like military base, and the main British guy tells Raju, like, go arrest that man. Mm-hmm. It's like, where's Waldo? In the middle of all these people.
Yeah, he throws something and breaks a window, I think.
And Raju jumps into this crowd and whoops ass.
Not just jumps, launches himself.
The action sequences are cartoonish.
It's cartoonish, but I kind of would have liked to see that set to something like Turn Down for What?
I mean, I'm sure there's probably a video on YouTube where someone did that. But yeah, I mean, it's very like The Matrix.
Mm-hmm. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon
came to
like mind
that.
A lot, yeah.
But yeah, he gets into that crowd and with his little billy club, whoops everybody's ass and brings that man to...
And then just returns to his post, bleeding.
Returns to his post. But I thought it was... I was laughing as it was happening because I thought, what if when he finally brought that man back, the main commander was like, I was just kidding. Like, I didn't actually mean for you to go out there. Okay. Then when we meet Bheem, mm-hmm. he's like in the forest and he has to like, he's chased by like a wolf and then the tiger shows up and there's a big sequence where he's fighting the tiger. I thought that was really, it was cool. I think the CGI, again, after watching Avatar 2, looked a little crunchy, but it was a fun scene.
All the animals are very, it's clear it's CGI. Good CGI.
It's decent, yeah. Then, when the two main guys meet, there's this boy in like a little, like, boat that gets there's like a big train crash and like a fire in the water, and this boy is in the water. And the two of them from a distance, the two main characters are doing some sign language where they devise this it's ridiculous.
Yes.
They devise this very elaborate plan to use a horse and a motorcycle to save this boy.
And a flag.
And it's comical.
It is.
It definitely feels like, like a graphic novel, like fan fiction. I feel like I was laughing a lot, and I don't know that that's supposed to be, I don't know if that's the reaction people have to these movies, but I was giggling a lot.
I was giggling, sometimes uncomfortably, particularly in the dance scene everybody loves, which...
Well, before we even get to the dance scene, then Bheem is in love with the daughter of the white British
Immediately.
guy. Like, he sees her and immediately is sprung, and then Raju devises this plan to, like, flatten her tires to get them to meet.
Which I would have been so mad at. And destroyed everybody else's day.
And everyone behind her. But, you know, he does that, like, 3 times, helping Bheem meet the white lady.
Because Bheem doesn't speak English.
Oh, okay, here. But first, let's talk about so the white lady invites him to a party, which is so... She's so unaware of like how these Indian people are being treated in their own country by these British people. They're all so rude to him.
That's apt for a white lady who's like, everywhere you go, your people that work for you are fucking rude.
Vile. But there's a big dance sequence that, again, it goes on for a little too long for my taste, but it's amusing. I was giggling a lot.
I read that it is period appropriate, but it looks fast forward and sped up and like a music video, and I understand why people are cheering for this scene, but it is also super corny. Oh my god. So
the dubbing and the subtitling were so off. And I know it's not the movie's fault, it's Netflix's fault. Whoever does, I don't know, localization, but it was terrible. I mean, the subtitles didn't match the dubbing at all.
No, there's at one point where I think in the dubbing we hear him saying maggot, and the subtitle says jackals.
Oh, there are so many examples you couldn't even write them down.
No.
And then what the biggest issue with the dubbing is that Bheem's character doesn't speak English. So the fact that he's being dubbed in English sometimes, and then the character speaking English says, I don't understand what you're saying. And again, it's not the movie's fault, I don't think, but
no,
it was very distracting. So then Raju is holding some guy captive, and the guy throws a snake at him, and it's this very deadly snake, and he says not even the British have an antidote. But then when he finds Raju crawls out into the street and then bumps into Bheem, and then Bheem is like, oh, I just need some charcoal and some weeds, and everything I need is right next to me, and then he cures him. But in the process of making this antidote with ingredients that are in like arm's distance, he shows him like his holy thread, and that's when Raju realizes that Bheem is after the girl. So then there's this major conflict. Like, well, now he has to defend the stolen girl. That was again, just scene after scene is just very interesting. They show up at the palace, Bheem does, with like a truck full of wild animals. I thought that was a fun scene where all the wild animals are attacking the British people. That was satisfying enough. But again, the action sequences, the fighting, the choreography, it's all so over the top. Okay, so then...
Oh, and so what ends up happening is Raju ends up saving his friend and sabotaging his own plan and gets locked up for... I don't know how many years past.
Well, because his hair's long.
His hair is very long. I'm like, is that the same person?
The hair length would indicate he hadn't cut it in 2 years.
Yeah. But then, because of that... Bheem finally meets up with Raju's lady love, who's played by a very notable contemporary star of Indian cinema, Alia Bhatt, who's also in this year's Gangubai Kathiawadi, as is Ajay Devgn. And he realized that she's Sita, and the details she feeds him, he realizes what his friend sacrificed and that he's really a good guy. And then he has to go back and rescue him.
Before Raju gets locked up, there's a scene where Bheem is captured, and the white British marshal general guy and his wife are like, you need to beat him so that he can...
I want to see blood.
So there's a very long, drawn-out scene of Raju beating Bheem, and the wife, that lady with the Botox, she is saying like, I want him to, you need to draw blood. I want a pool of blood at his feet, and he needs to kneel and admit to what he did. And of course Bheem refuses to admit anything. And then he has this long song where he's talking about how his blood will, like he's not going to admit anything he didn't do. And then it was hard to watch because the wife is like, you need to, she throws a different whip at him with like spikes on it.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to draw blood. And after they beat the hell out of Bheem, then all the citizens like revolt.
Yeah, it's like you couldn't.
Y'all couldn't do that before he
Could you do
ripped
this
all the meat off my back?
before my knees are destroyed, please?
So then, yes. And then we see Raju in his little cell. He's doing pull-ups, and it's a lot. Then the one lady faking smallpox who you just mentioned.
Alia Bhatt.
That was kind of a fun scene. Then when they finally reunite, Bheem and Raju, Raju's knees are messed up, so he can't walk. So Bheem is carrying him like piggyback style, and they have this like fight sequence that is, again, I giggled a lot. It's amusing. I don't know if that's a reaction I'm supposed to have, but ultimately,
I think it's meant to be entertaining and ridiculous. I think that is the purpose. It's meant to entertain.
It's fun. I mean, I had more notes, but it's just details. I think overall, if people like this style of movie, they would be very satisfied. I could see myself watching it in a theater with a crowd of people and having enjoyed it more than I did.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I would recommend it.
Yeah, it's something to see. I mean, it's obviously a part of this year's zeitgeist, right? And you know, the Indian film industry, there are a ton of films. I don't even know how you would keep up with the level of output from that film industry. And Netflix does have a wide array of them, including other films by Rajamouli, which I would catch up with, but I think I kind of have to be in a mood for this. But yes, it's definitely worth checking out, especially, you know, if you haven't, and to see what everybody's talking about. And to be honest, this is probably a more exemplary version of a lot of this type of Bollywood or Tollywood cinema. But
what would you give it?
2.5.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't for me. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.